Hey friend, in today's watercolor tutorial, we're going to be learning how to paint a Mojave Aster wildflower. This is inspired by some of the native wildflowers that bloom in JIGGY National Park. Without further ado, let's get painting. For today's watercolor tutorial, I'm using 6 colors. We've got Prussian Blue, Purple, Burnt Umber, Cadmium Yellow, Yellow Ochre, and Sap Green by Winsor & Newton. And I'm using 2 round Princeton brand brushes in sizes 2 and 4, and my paper we'll be working with today is a size 5x7. To get started, I want to paint the center of my aster flowers here, and I'm going to start by just doing a few yellow ovals using my size 2 brush, and I am just doing kind of almost like this cylinder kind of oval shape here. This one's kind of angled slightly. I'm going to add a few more in different areas. Maybe one's just an inch or so down below, off towards the right. I'm going to do another one a little bit lower here. Maybe one is kind of off towards the side, so it's a vertical. And then maybe one's just facing us kind of head on here, so I'll do one that's just a plain circle like this. Okay, so I'm gonna let this dry before we add our purple petals, and then we'll be right back. So now what I want to do is mix up some Prussian blue with some purple, and I want this to be more of a purple blue. It's not going to be too purple but not too blue, so just somewhere kind of in the middle. And next I'm going to switch gears back to my size 2 brush, and I want to kind of water down this purple just a little bit. And I'm going to start laying out my petals here using my size 2 brush. I'm just going to go around the ovals that we did with the yellow and apply some light pressure with my brush and really pointing these petals towards the center of the flower. The bottom petals just below the oval here are going to be the longest, and then the ones that are above this oval here are going to be slightly shorter, just so we can get the correct kind of perspective viewpoint of the flower. Okay, now I'm going to repeat this process all on these flowers here. Now for this forward-facing flower that isn't on an angle, the petals will all be the same size. But for the rest of the flowers, the bottom petals will be slightly longer than the top petals above the oval. While I'm still working with this shade of purple, I want to lay out a few side angled flowers, a few kind of smaller buds or different perspectives of the flowers. So to start, I'm just going to start with a little bud. So I kind of start with this really loose, kind of almost oval shape, and then a couple petals just fanning out on either side. Maybe I'll do another little bud here, starting with this oval, and then just a couple little petals off to the sides there. Maybe there's one that's kind of medium bloomed, so we've got some of the petals kind of slightly blooming outward with some gaps. Maybe I'll do just one right over here as well. Really being intentional with the variety of placement of the flowers. And then maybe I'll just do one more little bud right in this little gap here. Now I just want to add some more detail to our flowers and some shading. So I'm going to add just a bit more purple to this color, just to kind of brighten it up a little bit more. Okay, and with good saturation with my brush, I'm going to shade just around the center of the flower here, using really light, delicate pressure with my hand and just the tip of the brush, adding these little dash marks around the circle here. Once I have this circle, I'm just going to subtly outline one side of the petals here individually, just to give some shading and some definition to each of the petals. But for each flower, I start with the center, and then I slowly work my way around the flowers just to give that kind of outline and detail. So I will carry on this kind of shading technique throughout all the flowers. Switching gears to our greenery, I'm going to mix up some Sap Green, and I want to tone it down and make it a little bit of an earthier shade of green, so I'm going to mix in some burnt umber into the Sap Green here. And I also want to add just a touch of Prussian Blue. And we'll get this nice, rich, deep green shade for our leaves. Okay, now I'm going to just bring back my size 2 brush, and I want to slowly start to add in our stems here. Some of these stems will connect a little bit, so I'm just going to show how that will happen. To start, I want to start with our main top flower here, up towards the top, and we are going to be underlapping our stems. So I just do a dash line from behind here, and then I stop it once it reaches the flower. And it's almost like I'm going to be invisibly adding the stem mentally just above the flower, and it continues just past here. And then I'm just being intentional with the stems around some of the petal detail here. So there's our first stem. From there, I want to kind of connect some of our buds here. So I've got 2 buds. I'm going to start by doing a little dash line just tucked underneath right here. And then I'm going to paint a line that connects right to this little bud. And to add a little bit more detail to the base of the bud, I'm just going to add a little touch of green right at the base there, almost like an upside down triangle. And then from here, I'm going to do another really dainty, delicate stem just coming from the top of this petal here. It's underlapped behind that flower. And then I'm just going to connect it to this other little bud. And then I'll add some of that green at the base of this bud here. Okay. Now I want to add a curved line to this flower here, and I'm just going to overlap it on my previous stem. From here, I'm going to do a little dash line and just tuck it underneath here. And then I'm just going to continue it to this bud off towards the left, and then add that kind of green base to the bottom of the flower. All right, now I've got a floating little bud here, so I'm going to do another line kind of connecting to this former stem that we did. And then I'm just going to tuck it slightly in between these petals, and then just delicately curve it like so, so that way it's connected. All right, now I want to do a third stem, and I'm going to start by connecting it to this outer flower here, just with a curved green dash line. And then I'm just going to continue that curve like so. And then I want a really thin, delicate green line to connect to this little bud. And then from here, I'm going to just layer one final bit of greenery, starting with this dash line and bringing it up to this flower here. Just adding a few green dots just to show it's connected in between those petals. And next up, I want to start adding our leaves. So to start for our leaves, I like to do a really subtle rainbow curve, just like so. And then just below that rainbow curve, I'm going to kind of mimic that same curve, but just mirror it. And then add a point right at the end. Using this same green color, I'm just going to color that in. Maybe I'll have another leaf pointed upward. And again, I do kind of these rainbow curves that kind of mirror each other, and then I add a point towards the end. And I make sure some of the leaves are large, some are kind of smaller. And I'm gonna have them just pointed at different directions. I'll add a few small ones up towards the top and maybe a couple larger ones towards the bottom. But I'm just gonna incorporate those kind of rainbow curves with the points at the end, just to have some more bits of greenery throughout the flower. To give a little bit of dimension, I'm just going to overlap the same green shade that we did before. And I'm just going to outline the bottoms of some of these leaves and the outside of a few of the stems, just to give a little bit more shading and detail to our greenery here. For the last step of the painting, I want to add some detail into the center of our flowers here by using some yellow ochre, just to kind of detail some of the texture and pollen in the center. So just using some yellow ochre, I'm using light pressure with my brush, and just on the outskirts area, I'm just adding some yellow ochre dots, being sure not to cover the entire yellow circle that we laid out, but just enough to have some of those bright bits of yellow popping through while giving some shading and texture to the center of our flowers with the yellow ochre. Okay, that concludes this watercolor tutorial of an Aster wildflower inspired by Joshua Tree. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss any upcoming watercolor tutorials.